Hello, everyone, and welcome to ConcussionBeGone's roundtable discussion. My name is Nicole Toole. I'm the co-founder of ConcussionBeGone, and I'm also a TBI survivor and received my first traumatic brain injury in 2018, and thankfully was able to make a full recovery in after 8 months. So the purpose of the roundtable discussion today is to truly just talk about what's been going on in our world and society. We all know how challenging this year has been. And when you're going through a brain injury, there's a lot of uncertainty. But all of that is exasperated even more since we're living in such an uncertain society. So I wanted to open the floor and brought on four panelists to discuss these things and kind of demystify some of the things that we are all going through and, provide support to one another. So the agenda for tonight is I'm going to start with introductions. Then we're going to go ahead and begin the panel discussion in which I'll ask our panelists a few questions around the topics of COVID-19, race, and mental health. And then we'll end with questions, and then we'll go ahead and close at around no later than 7:30. So thank you guys so much for joining, and we're going to go ahead and introduce the panelists. Our first panelist is Jessica Brooks. She is a CEO, founder, mentor, motivational speaker, and scholar. Jessica Brooks is a graduate of Long Island University and is not only an allied health degree holder, but she is also helping to transform the lives of so many who have been diagnosed with TBI injuries. She is the founder and president of Jahzara's Way, which is an organization that provides a variety of outreach services to the local community, which includes Let's Talk About It, an educational program that provides TBI injury awareness within the community, the Little Box of Sunshine, which is an educational program where they provide college students with care packages filled with supplies and tips to avoid brain injuries while in school. The JW's Brainwaves is an educational podcast that provides brain injury awareness through the use of interviews with individuals, families, researchers, and healthcare professionals. Welcome, Jessica. Our next panelist is Nazeeg Haneshian. She is the founder and creator of The Invisible Scar. Nazeeg is a TBI survivor who, after 6 years, made a full recovery. Through the journey with her invisible scar, her concussion, Nazeeg graduated with a Bachelor's of Honors Economics and Business Administration with a minor in French from Wilfrid Laurier University. Nazeeg resides in Toronto, working in corporate strategy for a multinational corporation and continues to grow her jewelry business, Nazeeg Designs, where she started at the young age of 12. Currently, she's pursuing her MBA at Rotman University of Toronto, specializing in healthcare management and consulting. Today, she's the creator of Invisible Scar, and is symptom-free and shares her story to inspire others. Thank you, Nazeeg, and welcome. Next, we have Dr. James Zender. Unfortunately, he is not able to be here tonight, but Dr. James Zender is the author of Recovering from Your Car Accident, The Complete Guide to Reclaiming Your Life. He is a clinical psychologist, certified brain injury specialist, and certified traumatologist. His Psychology Today blog, The New Normal, made Healthline's list of best traumatic brain injury blogs of 2019. Zender was the founding director of the Center for the Prevention and Treatment of Psychological Trauma at Detroit Receiving Hospital and University Health Center, and was a full-time affiliate instructor in psychiatry at the Wayne State University School of Medicine. For the past 15 years, his private practice in Detroit metro area has focused on vehicular trauma injury recovery. He has lectured at the World Psychiatric Association, Harvard Medical School, the International Society of Traumatic Stress Studies, and the American Psychological Association. Thank you, Dr. Zender, and unfortunately, he's not able to be with us tonight. Last, but certainly not least, we have Dr. Molly Parker. She is the co-founder of the Concussion Compass and is a physical therapist whose life completely changed when she sustained a concussion in 2011. Unable to find knowledgeable care within the healthcare system, her symptoms deteriorated. As she continues her own journey, she dedicated her life to helping others optimize their concussion recoveries. She is also the co-founder of the Concussion Compass, a platform that provides community, education, and mentorship to help TBI survivors through the recoveries. Welcome, Molly. All right, so the first thing that I want to start this discussion on is COVID-19. And I want to ask you guys, how was your life changed after the onset of the virus came into your country? We all know how crazy it was, how shocking, and quickly everything changed. So how was it in your life, and did it affect you in any way? Share your thoughts.
Uh, Me, actually, I work in healthcare. I was able to get back into work, and I work for an outpatient physical therapy clinic as their office administrator. And the uncertainty was definitely alarming. We didn't know if we were going to close our clinic. We didn't know if we were going to have crazy hours. We ended up downsizing significantly company wide, and we had to actually reduce hours for employees. And it was kind of scary because financially, everyone was trying to figure out will they be able to make ends meet, which was a primary scary situation at that time. So, with that, and also just adapting to family life, um, where everyone is coming and going and we are at a standstill and no one is coming and going. Everyone had to stay put. So with my family and I, we actually got closer and were able to, iron out some discrepancies that we had in the past. So it's actually been like a secret blessing for my family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely can agree to that. And I think for a lot of people, and especially in the US, it's always go, 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 go. So for everyone to have to stop and just be for a while, I know a lot of people also shared how this was actually a blessing because they needed to rest. Um, so yeah, I definitely agree to that. How was it for you, Nazeeg?
For me, it was kind of an adjustment period as well. My sister and I had been living in Toronto for about 5 years. So as soon as lockdown hit, we moved back and came to the suburbs to stay with my parents. And I guess just kind of like an echo of everyone else too. It was almost like a blessing in disguise. Spent a lot of time with my parents, still staying here, and kind of learned how to adapt to the situation. Found that everything prior to COVID was really go, 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 and not a lot of time to really kind of sit back and reflect and map out like the direction of where we were going with all the things doing on a daily basis. So I found that although it has been really challenging at some points, and it has been an adjustment overall, it's also been an opportunity to kind of sit back, reflect, and redirect and understand where the priorities are. So I think that's kind of my take on COVID. It's been a roller coaster for sure, but it's also had its silver lining.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree to that as well. Did you guys have any parts during this time, because we're still in it, that just became more frustrating for you, or um, just what were some things that you guys kind of ran into that you didn't suspect or um, to have to deal with?
I can.
Oh, go ahead, Jess.
I'm sorry, Molly. I definitely could lead off with that. I was not expecting to fall into depression, and I had to actually seek help. And I had to find a therapist, and I had to walk through this hand in hand with my therapist. Um, everyone knows that there is a high probability rate when you have a brain injury that you can go into depression. And I was lucky enough during the acute phase that I didn't go through that. And what helped me was I kept busy. And no matter what it was, if it was something large or something as small as writing a quote of the day for myself, or as large as finding my nonprofit, I kept busy. And during the pandemic, I couldn't do anything that I would typically do to cope. I couldn't find what I could do to keep busy. And that was extremely difficult for me.
Yeah, I definitely think I relate to that as well. I think the isolation for me, and this is something that I experienced a lot when I went through my brain injury, was that isolation. So with COVID happening, we can't go outside, we can't see our friends. And where I live, it's in the country, so there's no one here. And so that isolation on the day to day also was really challenging for me to have to experience again. Even though we have virtual, we all know it's not the same. So I definitely think it's so important to stay busy, because it's so easy, especially with a brain injury, to fall into depression. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I think I would kind of echo that as well. I think one of my experiences since COVID has kind of been setting me back. And I think certain things reminded me of what it was like during my concussion. And I think it goes back to how, well, I was put on strict bed rest during my first concussion in 2012. And that was 8 months in bed with limited activity, no screen time. Although those things weren't a part of it during COVID, I just found spending so much time, for example, in my room, kind of in isolation, more or less, really took me back to the experience of a concussion and kind of like the dark place at times. And I found I'd constantly have to remind myself of how far we've come, and just to keep that sense of hope that it does get better, because it's easy to fall into the darkness, and a lot of the uncertainty, the adversity. It really just reminded me a lot about concussion recovery in general. So I think that was definitely one of the challenges for me during COVID.
Yeah. That was huge. We in particular, so we launched, so I returned to work during COVID, and that had been planned. And so, I mean, you guys can relate, you have to plan quite a bit so that you can manage your symptoms. And even though I had planned for things to go wrong, I didn't anticipate a pandemic. So we launched that week where everyone was losing their minds. And we ended up being like a lot of scrambling. My partner was worrying if she was going to lose her business that she'd been building. And so my symptoms spiked. It went into the like, am I going to be able to do this? Mixed with that frustration of knowing that I was more vulnerable, and hearing from some family in particular who weren't really taking it seriously. And so I kind of felt like I had to be extra careful to take care of my health because healthy people weren't going to. And I had a hard time with that. So I think that was like the biggest piece of frustration, was just I don't have the ability to adapt and have the energy that I would have if I was healthy and I was doing something new in a new place where I didn't know many people for the first time. I think that was the biggest frustration. And then dealing with, part of me felt like a bad person because, there was a part of me that was like, oh, you're home on your couch and that's hard. Yeah, it's not a vacation, is it? It like brought up all this resentful stuff that had happened during my brain injury that was kind of like reenacting. And it was dealing with a lot of that. So I just kind of went and saw my psychologist and talked a lot about that as well.
Even to piggyback on what you were saying, Molly, the anxiety, and it peaked, and I lost a lot of cognitive energy, and I literally was like knocked out after work every day. Sometimes even today, even as soon as 2 days ago, I came out of work and went to sleep at 5 and woke up the next day. And I thought this was done. I thought I was over this point. And because you are thinking of so many other things now, and you have to be considerate for temperatures, for post-ops, specifically at my job, or are these people being honest? Do they have COVID and they're still showing up to their appointments? And when you are bombarded with all of that, you get cognitively fatigued again, and it almost feels like I'm taking several steps backwards from my recovery. I don't know if you ladies had that same experience.
Oh gosh, yeah. I think it just goes to show that, stress and emotions have a big impact on your reserve and your well-being and your physical symptoms. And yeah, that was very, very prominent in the last few months.
I think, especially with everything that's going on, all those emotions are just heightened because of everything that's happening. So I definitely think it's really important, especially now, to be taking care of your mental health. Going to see a therapist if you need to, because it's so easy to go to those dark places, like you guys were saying before. So I think you guys were spot on. So I wanted to kind of touch on also just kind of the social unrest that's been going on in the US right now. It's hard to get away from it. It's something new every day. And it's overwhelming. So the first thing that I wanted to ask you guys was when you saw the protests and even just the news about the murders of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and so many others. What were your initial reactions and thoughts surrounding these issues?
I can definitely lead off with this. It was a extension of the heartbreak that America gives me. Being a Black woman, being African American, living in United States, I'm well traveled. So when I go to other countries, the experience that I have there is a completely different experience that I have in my own homeland. And just to see the social injustice like right in front of your face daily, and nothing really being done, it was just extremely painful, to the point where I needed to just turn off the TV. I needed to not listen to the news. And it was especially hard because when you do hear these stories are repetitive stories. And then you have to go back to work in corporate America and you have to put on this mask as if you're unaffected and you're really hurt and broken inside. And like I said before, I'm in healthcare and I'm an office administrator there in our clinic. And we would have patients come in and they would say, well, that jogger, he had to have been suspicious. Why was he jogging like that? And it was just like, wow, you hear this and you have to put on a professional face. You cannot show any emotion, even though your patients are breaking your heart. So it was extremely difficult, and it triggered my symptoms from my brain injury, and it made me extremely exhausted. It made my anxiety rise. It made the depression rise, and it was just extremely difficult to navigate through it. And even Molly reached out to me, and I'm like, I can't be on social media. I can't handle it. It's a bit much for me right now. So stuff.
Definitely. Molly or Nazeeg, do you guys have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those things where it's like, it's exactly that. It breaks your heart, and it's how many decades and centuries do we need to have the same stories repeated, and for one group of people with a lived experience to be saying the same thing, and for everyone to continue to like make excuses and, well, maybe it was this, and well, maybe it was that. So I found it very heartbreaking. And then there was a part when all the like protests started happening that I hoped that it would be like a catalyst for actual change, and that people would start kind of deconditioning themselves. And I found that to be mixed with the people around me. And then it was just trying to figure out as a white person, like, how do I be an ally? Where is my place? Where am I supportive? Where am I not helping? Where do I need to speak up? Where do I need to shut my mouth? So it was a lot of like listening and trying to educate myself.
I think that's something that a lot of even like my family, educating ourselves on everything that's going on. Because one thing, like even a lot of my friends were like, you know, like I didn't know it was this bad, or like I didn't know that this was happening, or how common it is. And so, especially during when it was really hot over the summer, um, you know, I just saw a lot of informational posts just about, you know, the history of the police, or the history of just some of the institutional things that we have been created in this country, that have held African Americans back, that haven't made things fair. So I think all around it was an educational time, for everyone to really look in the mirror to say, you know, this is what the problem is. This is where we are as a nation, unfortunately. And how do we go from here? So, I mean, I definitely think that's been helpful. And, you know, we haven't seen much change yet. Unfortunately, with, you know, we've heard what's happened to the officers in most of these situations. But I think definitely people are a lot more aware of it now, which can be helpful in hopefully preventing it. So,
Yeah, I think part of the problem is that America never wanted to admit that this is what's happening, this is what's going on. They've always kind of like swept things under the rug and didn't take ownership to what actually is happening. And now it's so blatant and so clear and shown everywhere that they can't deny it. And I think that is a starting spot as well. Just being able to take ownership to what you've done wrong, and you can move forward from that.
yeah, I definitely agree to that. So I definitely think we're all countries at a turning point. And I'll even say, like this stuff, like you said, it was swept over under the rug for so many years. And COVID maybe, and everything else just ripped that Band-Aid off. So now it has to be dealt with. So I definitely agree to that point. But what do you guys think needs to be done in order to make sure that, you know, racism, discrimination does not continue? Because even though a lot of it is institutional, I do think it can be changed with all of our actions. So what are your thoughts on that?
So I'll take that one because I didn't add on to the other part. But as somebody who's been born and raised in Canada, my parents are immigrants to Canada. I come from an Armenian background. So it's been very blessed to live in a country that's so multicultural and accepting, and always makes it easy and a norm to coexist and be accepting of differences. So when the Black Lives movement began, it was very concerning. I think it's a different magnitude in Canada, but it's very important that we continue to be aware and educate those who surround us. I think sometimes we get stuck in our own worlds, in just work, school, and kind of you just keep doing your routine and you kind of forget about things that are happening around you, and the things that are happening around you are more significant than you might think sometimes. And I'm grateful that this movement occurred, and I hope it continues so that we can advocate for change and we can be a part of the change. I think that comes from every individual, and it should be a responsibility. It should not just be a trend that occurred for a few months. This should be as individuals, we are responsible for our actions, and it's a collective work that it will bring the outcomes. I can relate to that specifically right now as an Armenian, where our country in Armenia right now is under attack by Turkey and Azerbaijan, and that's something that a lot of people might not be aware of. It doesn't get media attention. There's civilians being targeted right now. That doesn't get a lot of media coverage either. And it goes to show you how important it is as individuals to educate the ones around us, and also continue to advocate for humanity, because that's the right thing to do. And it's the right thing for everyone to have their dignity, their right to peace, and their right to coexist. So.
Mm-hmm.
I believe another solution to that would be to create more diversity at the table. If you are more inclusive, then you can get more viewpoints, and you're less likely to cause harm. So I think just creating spaces where there's more diversity would kind of suffocate racism in America, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, I guess from my perspective, part of it is like, it's hugely awareness. And then I think it's going back and taking a look at, like, particularly at, like, as a white person, there were a lot of things that years ago I would have told you, oh, I'm never racist and da 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 da. And then as you dig deeper and you look at this nitty gritty of like the institutions and the structure behind it, and just these little tiny, almost like I think of things in terms of the brain. So it's almost like neurons that fire together, wire together, right? And that's how we learn, that's how we unlearn. And anytime, you have two neurons kind of wire each other, that becomes completely subconscious, where we're unaware that that's happening. We just associate those two things together. And so I feel like to unlearn, you have to be aware that there's that association. Question, where did that come from? Question, is this accurate? Question, am I within my integrity, and am I treating people the way they ought to be treated? And I think I hope it's people, myself included, starting to ask themselves those questions so that they can really start to deconstruct some of these narratives that have been written around both Black people and people of color, especially in the United States. And then, like Jessica said, there needs to be like, you need to call a spade, like, and have people who participate in that, which I kind of honestly think is all white people, say, here's what I didn't do well, here's what I'm going to do better, and kind of like make amends and acknowledge what your role was and what you're going to do better, and then actively start to improve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think you brought up a good point with like how people, what you've always done and how you kind of don't realize some of the behaviors that you take on. And so it does take, being active and thinking about, why did I make that decision? Or like, why did I treat that person that way? Or like, what led me to believe something about this person without even talking to them? I think that's something that's really important, that all people have to do, just to make sure that the things that we've been taught probably when we were younger, don't continue to affect how we make decisions today. And someone asked a really good question. I'm going to ask it now to you guys. But Lisa said, how do you all deal with advocacy related to protest and civil unrest while balancing the effects of your brain injury? For example, she has tried to have conversations with a family member on systematic racism, and found herself very symptomatic afterwards, just because it is very emotional and intense conversation. She finds herself wanting to help more, be more productive, but feels limited in what she can do. What do you guys think about that?
So is it about going to protests or just discussing within the family? I guess I could speak to both, but yeah. So I mean, for me, I've always been an advocate for justice and the truth. In the past couple of weeks, we've been actively taking part in peaceful protests. to raise awareness about what's going on in Armenia. So for me, it's always been to ensure that my symptoms are okay before I'm able to do anything. And as somebody who's recovered, I try to just not overexert more than I should, to not get any symptoms or any headaches that would be impacted. But I think it's important to really listen to your body. There's different ways that we can all advocate. You can advocate on social media. You can advocate with your family and friends in a discussion. You can also advocate taking part in a protest. And it's good to assess that according to what's making you feel okay at the time. A lot of these things, the more passionate we become about a topic, the more heated the discussion can be. And I think it's very important to kind of remain factual and try to separate the emotions as much as you can from what's taking place. Personally, again, I'll bring it back because it's a very relatable topic too, is because we're taking part in the protests as well. When you have family that's being directly impacted overseas, that makes you feel you can't separate your emotions. And just as we can look at different human rights advocacy right now too, everybody is related to that pain in a different magnitude. And it's really important to acknowledge that, but also ensure that you're always assessing yourself to not overexert at the same time. So that would be my point of view.
I think that's really good. And oh, did someone say something? Oh, I thought, okay. Sorry, y'all, but I completely agree with, especially when we're talking about these topics that are very emotional. There's a lot of emotions tied. Like even a few weeks ago, I had to step away from a conversation from a friend because I was becoming too emotionally involved in the situation. Leaving causing me to cry and just go to a place that I don't ever want to go. And so I do think, it's also important, especially with a brain injury, because we all know how closely connected our emotions are with the physical. Um, to, yes, have those conversations, but also know when it's time to step away. Because some conversations just are not worth having with some people. So I just think that's something to also, think about is like if you're noticing you're becoming very symptomatic as the conversation goes on, step away. And because I think, you're also very important. And taking care of yourself is too. So yeah. But awesome. Good question though, Lisa. Thank you. And if you guys have any other questions, then feel free to drop them in the chat. All right, so we're going to close this out talking about mental health. As we all know, this is the time that we all need to be taking care of ourselves. So I know, Molly, you're still recovering from your brain injury. So how has these outside circumstances, has it affected your recovery? Have you noticed any changes? Yeah, just if you had anything to share on that.
Yeah, I think it has. I really struggle with social injustice, and I get very emotional about it. And my balance has been kind of like Nazeeg was mentioning on, you have to be able to take care of your health so that you can give appropriately. So it's been balancing that. I think overall it's been filtering my media a little bit. So reading things and having conversations with people who are willing to have conversations versus versus inundating myself with too much news and this and that kind of thing. So I think it's been honestly like a huge up and down roller coaster. There's been times during this whole time period where I felt everything felt really heavy and I didn't know how to process it. And then there's been times where the pandemic slowed things down so much that I almost felt like it gave me an opportunity to breathe at other times, and be able to be a little bit more social because other people didn't have such huge demands on like what I was doing. Like rather than going to a house party, it's like one time for dinner, and that's been nice to feel like I can actually participate in things and So it's affected my recovery both positively and negatively.
Mhm. Definitely. I think that's good. And we kind of touched on this before, but how has y'all's mental health been through this? And what are some tips that you have for just managing it during these times?
Some tips to give on how to manage mental health was I was making sure that I drink a lot of water um, and also making sure that I'm eating well, exercising, taking time for myself. I made a promise to myself that I would at least give myself an hour uninterrupted every day. So I wake up 4 o'clock in the morning and I literally just do nothing, and it's just for me, which has been extremely helpful. Um, Exercising, going to see my therapist, doing the work, and that's it. Just trying to have a balanced life, and in writing, I've been writing a lot, so that's been helping.
Hmm. Kudos to you for waking up at 4:30. That's amazing.
Impressive.
So truly. But yeah, I definitely relate to that. Journaling has been my go-to. Um, just because I guess that's the best way for me to write my feelings, and just what I'm going through. So journaling, um, at the start of the day has been what I've been doing pretty frequently. But I will be honest and say, like, things have not slowed down for me. So I thought everything would be a little bit easier with the pandemic. Um, but it has not. Being in college, you'd think that professors would be a little bit more understanding, but they have not. So, my mental health has definitely um, taken a hit, and I actually started seeing a therapist a few weeks ago, because it was not good. So I definitely think, doing all those things, journaling, and also really knowing when it's time for you to see someone. Because for a while I was just kind of like, this is just a day, I'm just having a bad day today. But, getting ahead of those thoughts and also realizing that sometimes you do need help, whether it's from a friend or to someone who is a professional. I think really being able to know, being that much self-aware is just really important as well. So yeah. Any other tips?
I think what Jessica said on like having that scheduled time where it's like for you, where it's okay to disconnect. I go to across the street to the beach for an hour and I leave my cell phone. So that way I don't check it. And that's the time where it's me and it's whatever I need, and almost scheduling time for play has been one of the most helped. And then when things get super heavy and super dark, when I'm able to process it enough, journaling has been huge. But when I'm just really deep in it, my psychologist, I remember she said, focus on what's right in front of your face. And I've had to go back to that over and over and over again when things are so overwhelming that it's just, what do I need right now? Like, what do I need? And then give myself the permission to give myself whatever that is, whether it's rest or focus on this job or whatever it may be. That has been really helpful.
I like that tip. Focus on what's in front of you. Is that what you said?
Well, she says focus on what's in front of your face. It's just kind of, you can't fix everything, and when it's all swirling, it's a lot.
I feel that. I definitely do. And I feel like especially um like whenever I'm super anxious, I'm already thinking about like the next 3 days ahead and like what I have to do. So it's just like really creating a list of things that have to be done today, what has to be done tomorrow, what can wait another week. And just being really making small steps in your to-do list.
Yeah.
That's been super helpful for me too. So
Yeah. Oh, one more thing to add on to that. So I started going week by week, because in periods where you have to adapt a lot, I found like all my little tricks didn't work, because one week to the next was completely different. So it was doing what you were talking about, Nicole, where it's like planning out your week and the days and what needs to get done. And then every week going back and saying, okay, what worked this week? What didn't? Like, what do I have coming up next week that I might need to plan and adapt for? What can I, like, what are some things that may come up? And what are the ways that I'm going to address them? And that, like, 1 week at a time has been really helpful too.
Yeah, I think that's good. I'll probably have to take on that as well. Yeah, that's good. That's good.
I would actually add on to that as well, like to what Molly said about taking things on. I think I've noticed for throughout COVID, it's been a lot of uncertainty, and it's just trying to get through the adversity at times I found was a bit more challenging. For me, I noticed my stress and like mental health impact came after the lack of structure. I went from going to the office to driving to school for my classes to socializing and going to different places to completely being at home. So everything was on Zoom calls, work was done off of the laptop, school was now done on the computer, and just small things as dressing up every day. It went from changing from your day pajamas to your night pajamas, and it was just out of routine. And I found that actually had like a mental impact on me. And it just sounds like the smallest thing, but it was just, not doing your hair, not putting on anything that was kind of work related, just kind of made me feel so not myself. And I noticed that after a couple of weeks into it. So that was one of my learnings, was I felt like that had a mental health impact on me as well. So I've started to kind of get in a routine and make sure that I'm always kind of like dressing up, even if I don't leave the house. And small things like that, which had also had an impact as well. I found adding structure in terms of exercise and making sure that I'm eating right, eating at the right time, since I'm home all the time, not snacking as much. And it's been a learning process. And I don't think that was something that I just learned like this in a couple of weeks. We're still a few months in, and I'm learning more about myself and the structure there. One of the examples of that has been, since I've been home, one of my cousins and I have also now started to exercise together. Every morning we meet at 6:30 in the morning and exercise for an hour, disconnect from our phones, have nice conversations, do something for us that's physically beneficial, but I've also felt an improvement on my mental health from that as well. And I think the social media fatigue was definitely a part of it as well. And initially when we were stuck, a lot of us were doing, amongst our friends too, birthdays online and kind of connecting through that and through all the screen time. And I guess you can kind of call it added noise in our life. It's been like an opportunity to kind of step back a little bit and kind of filter what we expose ourselves to, and for however long that is as well. So I found a lot of things really had an impact on my mental health, and I would kind of go through saying like that. Initially, it was kind of sadness, but I've also had that feeling of agitation, frustration, and kind of growing through it. And I think looking back at it as an experience of growth and learning, instead of looking at it as kind of like a dark place, has helped. So perspective really is everything.
That is very true. And I like how you, because one thing I noticed when the lockdown happened, was just how similar it was to when I was going through my brain injury. Because before I was super active, I was in all of the sports teams, all of the clubs, was doing a whole bunch. And then in one day I was out completely. And so having to figure out, how do you structure your life now that everything is 100% different, is something that's really important. Because I know, especially for myself, when I first had the injury, I was just sleeping and eating and sleeping and eating. So I wasn't going outside, I wasn't exercising, I wasn't really talking to anybody, which contributed to the anxiety and the depression. But once I created a structure for myself, in the morning I'm doing my vestibular exercises. then I'm working out, this is what I'm eating. Planning all that stuff out helped me give myself purpose because, I had some type of structure, even though my health was all over the place. I was doing things every day to kind of get through, hopefully get to recovery. So I think one thing in COVID, as a TBI survivor recovering, it's important to create those structures, like you said, Nazeeg, structuring your day, just to help you, honestly, I think even to stay sane through all this. So I think you brought up a really good point. Definitely. Well, all right. Does anyone have any last words before we open the floor up for questions? Final thoughts?
Mostly just thank you for putting all this together, and kind of bringing the community for an opportunity to talk. I still just I kind of feel like I don't know how I feel about a lot of things. So I really value the three of you coming and sharing your perspective. And I just think it helps to feel like people who get both pieces can talk. So thank you.
Yes. I could definitely piggyback on that and say thank you for putting this together and actually reminding us that we're not alone. And, there are other individuals that are going out there, that are, going through the same challenges as I am with the TBI as well as the pandemic and things of that nature. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Of course, of course.
Yes, thanks, Nicole, for organizing this. And it's been nice for all of us to share our perspectives and our experiences. And like Molly and Jessica both said as well, it's a different kind of comfort when we know that we're not alone. Sometimes it can feel how overwhelming the situation is, and you kind of almost feel like you are in it alone, but just taking a step back and knowing that there are other individuals who share the same sentiments and are experiencing the same kind of pain in different magnitudes. It's comforting to know that you're not alone.
Definitely. That is so true. And we're not alone. So true. Well, thank you guys so much. I'm truly so thankful because Molly knows, like 2 weeks ago I had this idea and we scrambled this thing together. So I'm so thankful that you guys were a part of this. And I look forward to continuing having relationships with all of you. So yeah, thank you so much. And if anyone has any questions for the panelists, then you can drop them in the chat. If not, then we'll go ahead and close this out. Oh, very nice. All righty. Well, everyone have a great week. Election day is November 3rd. So please vote if you haven't already done so. I hope you guys stay safe. I hope you stay warm because it's getting chilly out. And yes, thank you all so much.
Thanks for having us. Thanks everyone for joining in.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
That concludes the Concussion Begone Roundtable event. Thank you so much for tuning in, and be sure to follow Concussion Begone on Instagram as well as on our website for more exciting and informational events. Bye, and we'll see you soon.